going on, everybody? This episode is proudly sponsored by Performance Supplements, Red Clover Coffee, and Crunch Fitness. Now you can go over to performancesup with 2ps.com and put in code IWP at checkout to save 15% off site-wide. Also, redclovercoffee.com. I know you guys love coffee. I love it too. You can go over there and put in code IWP for 10% off everything on the website. Now, I have the Vitagrow here and his Korea Grow from Alex Freaky, wrist wraps and straps, Shaker Cup t-shirt. There's more products on the way that he's sending. And then he also just launched a brand new series, I guess you will, is like a pharmaceutical line, which is going to be very cool. I'm extremely excited to try. And then Red Clover Coffee, a couple packages on the way. I'm going to do an unboxing video of that stuff. He sent a few things in there that I'll let you guys look at and see what they're all about. I can't wait to try the coffee. So I want to give a shout out to all our sponsors for the past episode or two going forward. They are our sponsors for Intel Within podcasts, and it's not possible without the sponsors. It really helps, and then also having you guys, the fans, tune in and check everything out that they have to offer. Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to episode 10. Who I have Lane here with me. Lane, can you pronounce your last name because I do not want to butcher it?
Yeah, Lane Kawaoka. I am the podcaster at simplepassivecashflow.com, soon to be the wealth elevator.
There we go. So the reason why I'm doing episode 10 for you guys is, he started at a young age as far as making business moves, where I look at it, roughly a teenager, sophomore in high school. And I get questions from a lot of friends, and I do have a lot of friends that are, realtors or into real estate, and they don't know what to do with their money. They're afraid to leave it in the bank or take it out. They're afraid to invest with things. So I ended up coming across Lane and essentially read, a synopsis of his bio, and it's very, very impressive. I believe it said over 10,000 rental properties, which is pretty remarkable in the business aspect of it as far as cash flow. So do you want to kind of talk about how we were talking offline about how you started so young with kind of what you were deciding to do with your money in the bank and put the money into like a Roth IRA?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of started on what I call the traditional path, and putting your money in the 401k. Roth, you think you're smart because you're doing a Roth IRA, but it's all these like kinds of investments that Wall Street wants you to put your money into. In reality, it's very high fee, and it's just not very good for people like us. It's good for them and financial planners selling that stuff, but just not very good for us. And then there's like the whole ETFs, that kind of cuts out the middleman a little bit, but still it's all in the traditional investment world. And like my parents are very traditional in all senses, right? We are raised to be very frugal with our money. Invest your money, and like right. I said, like when I was 13, I put my money in that stuff. So I could really see how ineffective the damn thing was, right?
Yeah.
And then you add on to that, like, I happened to be okay at math and science, so I became an engineer as, going through college. And then I started to work for the man. And I really call this like the linear path, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're all taught to go to school, study hard, whether you go into the military or not, right? You eventually get out and you go off and have to make money. If you want to have a career, you can have a career, but you got to make money. You got to invest it along the way. But most people, it takes them like 40, 50 years. And some people never get to what I define as real retirement, which is your passive investments make more money than you can spend. For most of us in our ecosystem, it typically means more than $25,000 of passive cash flow a month, which is coming from a net worth pile of $4 to $5 million is kind of the end game goal. So what we educate people on today at the Wealth Elevator is, like, what are like the sophisticated people with money really doing in comparison to what the heck the masses are doing, because they're just following what Wall Street wants them to do.
So what kind of got you? So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were an engineer for like 14 years, correct? Or roughly around that time frame?
I don't know. It's such a distant memory to me, but yeah, I went to school to be an engineer. Started to work in construction management because I wasn't a very good, academic person. So I was working as construction supervisor for at least 6 7 years,
Mhm.
and then but something happened like right after I graduated. Like I was saving my money to buy a house to live in because we're all brainwashed to buy a house to live in, which I don't
Exactly.
think
Yep.
you should buy a house to live in unless your net worth is 2 or 3 times greater than the house. So
Okay.
if you make, doesn't matter what you make. It's like, like if your net worth is $1 million, then I think it's okay to buy maybe a $500,000 house, which is for most people's standards is absurd. But your house isn't, making you money. It's merely going up at the pace of inflation.
Right.
Um, but I bought a house to live in because again, I'm following this linear path, not thinking for myself.
Mhm.
And because I was traveling all over for work, as a lot of young professionals do, I was, I thought it was kind of a waste of money. So I started to just rent it out. I got a property manager, paid him 10% of the rents, and I was making a lot of beer money doing this, right? Like my mortgage was
Yeah,
like
sure.
2,200 and the rents were, yeah,
Like
yeah,
way more.
the rents, yeah. I don't know. I forget what it was such a long time ago, but I was making like 400 or 500 bucks a month doing this thing, right? And I was
Mhm.
like, man, when you add, that's just the cash flow.
Right.
Real estate
After you're
investors
paying
make,
mortgage.
yeah, and you're paying all these expenses that come up. And then what a lot of investors don't realize, you got to put money away for the big capex items. We have like an analyzer on the website for free. Everything is on the free for the website for
Mhm.
people to get if you really want to get into the nitty gritty numbers. But real estate investors make their money four ways. What I was talking about earlier, like the beer money, that's cash flow, right? Income minus expenses. But you're also the tenants paying down your mortgage for you, right? They're putting their heart, sweat, and tears paying down your mortgage, and your equity, getting the equity built up that way. And that's the key difference between owning your own house. When you own your own house, you're the sucker paying down your own mortgage and
Right.
putting in the equity into that.
For 30
But then you
years.
also, thirdly, you get the tax benefits, and then fourth, you get the market appreciation. Although I kind of consider that lucky, right? Because it goes up and down. But
Mhm.
when you add up all these four, I was making like 20, 35% plus of my money without really doing too much. And I don't think I was that great of an investor. And then, I was like in my mid 20s,
Wow.
and I was like, why the heck would I want to put my money in this 6 to 8% garbage going up and down like a roller coaster? Why don't I just keep doing this? And I think a lot of our clients, they make good salaries, right? Like six figures, some even more.
Mhm.
And it's just a matter of like putting your money to buying down payments for rental properties and buying more and more and more. Eventually, when you get to a certain point, you get rid of rental properties because they're kind of a pain in the ass and do syndication private placements. But from a high level, right? Like I'll pause there. That's kind of the name of game, right? Buy assets that make money for you, and have your assets um, help you grow your income as in addition to you getting
Mhm.
up every day and going to work.
So how long did it take for you to go, like, after you started realizing that and doing that one property, to like branching out and doing your second or third? Like what how long did it kind of take you to build that up? Was it a couple years or was it pretty quick?
Well, I mean, you're only limited to how much money you make and save, right? So I was making, I think, like 100 grand I made that year, but I was very, very frugal, right?
Mhm.
Again, for a while there, I was living on the road off the company dime.
Okay.
Maybe if you're deployed, similar, right? Like I was
Mhm.
making like all my money, um, always was going to the bank, right? So in theory, I could have bought a few houses with that every year, with 20% down payment, of
Right,
course.
right.
Um, but in the beginning, I was buying houses in Seattle where I live, which I think is kind of a mistake. And you want to buy houses where the rent to value ratios are better.
Right.
So the way we teach that is, there's primary, secondary, and tertiary markets. Places like Seattle, or where are you located now?
So I'm stationed in Northern California, but my wife and I were from Texas.
Okay, okay. What city in Texas?
Dallas, Fort Worth.
Okay, so pretty much all of California, Seattle, Hawaii, New York, they're all primary markets.
Mm-hmm.
Don't buy rentals in there, guys. It's a waste of money. You have too much people with too much freaking money. It's just gonna waste your time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna have this thing called the rent to value ratio over 1%. And that's one of the key things we look for is like a certain ratio from how much we're buying something for in comparison to how much money we bring in. Makes sense, right? But
Right.
most investors are pretty amateur landlords, and they just don't understand this concept. And part of it is they don't have the cojones to get outside their local area, go invest
Yeah.
somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most, you take your average lower middle class home in California or LA, like you'd be lucky to buy a house there for 500 grand that's in the ghetto that
Yeah.
will rent for 2000 or 2000 2500 a
Yeah.
month. So the math is 2500 divided by 500 grand, that's 0.5%. No bueno,
Jeez.
ain't gonna work, right? So what we'll be in like more of these secondary markets, so less sexy markets.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought my first few units in Seattle. Again, don't buy there, But then I learned of these secondary markets, right? So I started to buy in Birmingham, Atlanta, and Indianapolis, where I could buy a $90,000 house. Well, screw it. Who cares what I bought it for? It ain't
Yeah,
applicable
it's okay.
today,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, guy can buy a property there for like 100 grand and maybe get $1,000 a month rent, roughly. So 1,000 divided by 100 grand is 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the numbers work a lot better in those secondary markets. There's tertiary markets too. You might get a little bit better numbers, but it's not as robust as a secondary market type of area. Dallas, Houston, we invest apartments there nowadays.
Yep.
I would call them strong secondary markets. But that's kind of what makes this go, right? Like buying the right properties in the right areas for the most part.
Yeah, I see a lot of people there. Like our neighbors right now, they've been in California. I think he said his whole life. I think I want to say he's like 50 years old, and they're retired. They bought a home in Tennessee. They bought it. I think it's like a 1,400 square foot home. It's just their house, just for them and like their 5 dogs, and it came with 35 acres for 190. And I mean, they people are just buying property like crazy in Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, of course Texas. I agree with that for sure, because this house right here, this house was as high as 864, I think, when maybe like 3-4 months ago. And then all of a sudden, after 30 days, it dropped down to 740. And I'm like, geez, it's dropping over 100 grand in less than 30 days. And it's just kind of, like you said, it's going up and down. And it's so
But
high
let me
rent.
catch you there, man. Like,
Yeah.
like what you're talking about is this like price variability, and like
Mhm.
prices are going to go up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
They're not always going to go up, right? But what we focus in on is the rents that are being brought in by that asset.
Mm.
Like what you're mentioning is the prices go up and up and down, up and down. Like a lot of times when we buy these assets, it's mainly for the cash flow. Like it
Sure.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I don't want to be so out of touch where I'm like, well, it's not about the price, right? But
No.
it kind of isn't, right? The price goes up and down, up and down. Who cares?
Right.
What is like what's happening on the monthly basis? Like that house that you're in, say it's 750. What would it rent for? Probably barely 3,500, right?
Right.
That's a horrible rental property.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are just unable to effectively use the internet properly and go outside their local area, which is why they're confined to where they're at. But with the right ecosystem and connection, you can buy some rentals. And we have a program that's for free, none of this BS where you have to pay for stuff. Even like these guys charge all these programs for lower net worth trying to buy rental properties. But that's what I did, right? Like I sold my Seattle rentals, and I had 11 rentals in Alabama, Pennsylvania, Birmingham, and Atlanta. And I had 11 of these rental properties out there. And I wasn't doing the stuff where you're buying rent rehab stuff. I think that's more for guys who make less than 100,000 a year, because to me, like most of our clients make over 100 grand a year. And I feel like if you're past that threshold, generally you should probably put your time and effort into progressing your career to get more raises.
Right.
Maybe more or less if you don't like your job, that's something different, right? But for the most part, you're probably better off doing that and then putting your money into more syndications and private placements, which come later in the wealth building journey. Like when I was, under $500,000 net worth, buying rental properties is what I think, people should do. I mean, my salary was not phenomenal by any stretch of the imagination, right? Some of these kids coming out of college with computer science degrees are making 150, 200 a year.
Wow.
Man, you're in Northern Cal, man. Like that's like average starting pay out there. You don't go out to the San Fran. No, why would you, right?
It's pretty it's pretty average out here now that I see it when I was looking online today. So it's I mean, it kind of has to be. It's, I mean, like you said, it's so expensive, but now.
Yeah, you're old like me, man. You're out of touch, right? It's phenomenal what these kids get paid, right? Like
it's no, I mean honestly, it's like one of the better ways to put it, because it just blows my mind, because I don't see anybody working, but these people are making so much money. I'm like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And they're a lot younger, and I'm just like, what is going on? And everybody's doing this, that, and the other. But what do you typically, if you're going to look at new property, like rental property, what are the few things that you like look for that is going to draw your eye to be like, okay, I want this property, I don't want this one, I want this one? Like what are like a few characteristics or whatever about a house, or the money and whatever you look at as far as assets and the area for you to want to get a home or a rental property, whatever the case may be?
Well, I mean, we don't really advocate for our clients to buy rental properties these days, right? Because most of our clients are accredited investors. But back when I was doing that type of stuff, it's more driven by the numbers. Let's hit the right side of the cow here, right? It needs to cash flow on a monthly basis. So that rent to value ratio better not be under 0.8 or 1%. That's first off. Generally, the places in the country that you're going to hit that in secondary markets are going to be in the South, the Sunbelt states.
Right.
The emerging markets, Arizona, Texas, Alabama, Florida, the Carolinas. I mean, you take those 5 states, they're going to do better than all 45 from an economic standpoint. And that's where you want to be anyway. You don't want to be in blue states as a landlord.
Yeah, it's like when you said Seattle, I was like, the first thing that popped in my head, I was like, wow, that's expensive. And then, of course, California, it's just like along the West Coast is like a lot of those are pretty expensive. And of course, you said like blue states. So what is
blue states? Because not like I don't like blue states. I live in one. Great place to live in. But when you're the landlord, you don't have the landlord laws on your side.
What is?
I just want to put that out there. I don't want to get canceled or anything like that.
No, you got to be careful, right?
Gotta be careful. Be cool, right?
Yeah. So what's the website that you have that you were talking about that people can kind of go on to and stuff like that, just to kind of like plug your stuff there as well as people are listening?
So currently it's simplepassivecashflow.com. We have a podcast that I've been doing since 2016. In the beginning, I was kind of doing a lot of like rental properties, but as I became more of an accredited investor, I started to meet other accredited investors, and a lot of them were dumping their rental properties because they just outgrew them. After a while, with like I had 11 rentals, each kicking off a few $100s of passive cash flow each, which is awesome, right? Like at the time I was stoked by that. But what $300 times 11, 33 grand a month. Yeah. What American family can survive off that? And to give people an insight of what it's like to own 11 rentals, I mean, you get a property management company to do it for you, because your biggest thing is, especially if you make over 100 grand a year, is to go to your job, make more money there, and kiss your boss's butt so you can get paid more. Um,
Right.
but that, you know, I had maybe an eviction or two every year, some kind of big catastrophe that happened every quarter. Of course, the property manager takes care of it, but it's kind of annoying, right? But if you want to get like what a lot of people will aspire to initially is $10,000 of passive income a month.
Mhm.
Then you need 30 rental properties.
Right.
Boy, is that a pain in the ass, right? An eviction every other month, some kind of
Yeah.
catastrophe every couple of weeks, right? Like, and the legal liability that comes with it. And this is why once investors either make over a couple $100,000 a year, or certainly when their net worth progresses past half a million, you dump those things as they were great starter assets, right?
Mhm.
You dump, and then you start to go into more of these country club, private placement, and syndication type of opportunities with other accredited investors. You take down a 200, 300 unit apartment complex, or you build an apartment from the ground up, and then you start to get into commercial assets that way.
So, how much would you say on average that somebody would need to kind of get set up at simple passive cash flow? Like what what is for like what would you say is like a low ball for somebody that could be younger trying to get involved in this and trying to get in touch with you and trying to make it work?
Well, I mean, what we try and do. I mean, I was there at one time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Myself. And I had a college degree, so I wasn't no like zero to hero story or anything like that. But for guys who have a good salary, under 250,000, 500,000 net worth, like we have a lot of content just to go buy your own rental property on your own. We give away that stuff for free. Because the idea is in several years, 5 years plus, you'll get to accredited investor status. Um, but yeah, for the higher income earners, those people can kind of jump up to private placements and syndications right away. Um, they may or may not need to be an accredited investor to participate in a lot of these opportunities. In fact, you go on the SEC website and you peruse there at the gazillions of documents they have. Majority of the deals that are out there are for non-accredited investors, and this is where it's all who you know.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff that's on the crowdfunding websites are just stuff that
Yeah.
couldn't get funded. And so the crowdfunding website is acting as a broker dealer, no different than a financial planner selling you commission products. What I've always done personally is invest directly with the people, because I'm more, I want to do business with people I know, like, and trust, and build relationships with other passive investors that can help me lead me to the right investments, or tell me which ones to stay away from. Um,
So, do you think somebody with let's just say, I'm just gonna say like 25, 30 grand could like really turn that into something, or try to get a rental property or like an Airbnb or something, whatever, people are thinking about doing?
what are they making a year?
Let's say 140.
140 a year? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty damn good salary. I would probably say, well, just learn about buying a rental property.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe buy one, maybe two, but then I would say think about going into syndications and private placements and scaling up, for more of you're obviously scaling up, but the more important thing is you're getting more passive, right? All the headaches, when you're in a syndication or private placement, you're not doing anything.
And can you
You just
explain the syndication placement for people?
Yeah, so syndications, the analogy I like to use is like an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
So we all get on an airplane to shoot. You're in the Air Force, right? Like
Yeah.
pilots and the co-pilots, that's all in the general partnership. They fly the airplane, and then all the passive investors get in the coach, invest the money, sit on the plane, and they all ride together, right? Live or die, they all fly together. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's alignment, right, in interests for everybody, GPs and LPs, coach. Um, and the idea is you go into dozens and dozens of these projects to build your portfolio over the years, and you're so diversified over different properties, different operators, different geographic locations. Um, all directly with the source, right? Cutting out all the middlemen. That's the key.
So is like for someone to do something like that, could somebody do it with 10 grand or do they need a lot more than that?
Yeah, you're not going to get into these deals if you're writing smaller than $50,000 checks. I mean, you probably could,
Mhm.
but you're probably going to work with a more inexperienced operator who's just desperate to take your money, and that would be very careful of that.
What's like the ROI on something like that if you were to put in just hypothetically like 50 grand into that and invest in there?
I mean, there's a huge range, right? But
Mhm.
like, in private equity with operators under, a few $1 billion in assets, so not institutional return. Institutional returns aren't as strong, right?
Mhm.
We're talking more, more private operator groups. Anywhere from like on the low end 10% a year to 25% a year is kind of being reported, right? So
Mhm.
I'm giving a big range, right? But that range is obviously the low end is better than the crap you're getting in mainstream traditional
Right.
investments, right? But here's the big thing, right? When you invest in alternative investments, it's categorized as a different type of income. It's not ordinary income where you get taxed the hell out of it. It's passive income. And when you combo the fact that you're investing in real estate, which has so much great tax benefits where you can write off the depreciation on asset, that's how you get into the situation where you don't really pay taxes on it. Make.
So you don't have to have like an LLC doing something like this, right? As far as like being like an investor, is this like an individual thing, or do you have to get like an S corp type of LLC going on, or no?
I'm not a attorney or anything like that, so take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah, yeah.
But like LLCs are entities, right? Entities don't really have anything to do with taxes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're what they are for is for legal liability protection for the most part, right?
Right.
As far as taxes, you can just call yourself a sole proprietor. I mean, I did that when
Oh,
I
okay.
owned rental
True.
properties for many, many years. I think where things where it kind of gets lost is like, lawyers like to scare people into like buying stuff like entities. And if you got the money, you want to blow $1,000 on an LLC, then do it, I guess. You get the legal protection, but from a tax standpoint, it all flows down to you personally.
That's true. Trying to think is I know that they're so do you have properties in Texas, you said in Houston?
Yeah.
So I mean not like giving away like too much of your stuff, but if somebody goes in and does um like these cash flow projects in that sense, like what kind of advice did you give them to look for as far as like a return for themselves? Like you were saying like 1%, was that what you were saying earlier, 1% or more?
Um. Whoops, sorry. Okay. So if they're going into one of these areas looking for a little rental property,
Yeah, so like if someone's trying to look at it, what is some advice that you would give them as far as like, hey, only take it if the return is this, or whatever kind of investment, because a lot of the people that do watch are going to be like number people, so
yeah,
what.
yeah, and I think this is where like the podcast format really sucks, right? Like I would probably just urge people to just go down my free analyzer. It's just a spreadsheet where like you put in the rent, how much rent you think you're gonna get.
Mhm.
You can go all these sources to figure it out. I would advise people to go to a property manager, go right to the source and what they're gonna list it for, and then you need to kind of calculate and estimate all your expenses. Now, for a new person, that's gonna be super difficult.
Right.
I have videos where I walk through all the line items, right? And you can kind of get a start. Um, but some of like, we mentioned the 1% rent to value ratio,
Mhm.
right? Um, the next one is like the 50% rule where, say you make $1,000 rent, right? Normally the assumption is like the 50% rule, or 50% of that, or $500 is going to go to various expenses. It may seem a lot, but when you start to add in like the big ticket items that aren't fixed, very often, like, you got to repave the driveway every 25 years, the roof every 20 years, the washer dryer, it adds up.
Yeah.
Um, So that's where like a lot of people, like let's say your if you were to rent your place out, right, and you were to take $3,000 in rents, 1,500 of that is going to somehow go out expenses. Don't ask me how. Just shit happens, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you get it. Right? You're in your 30s. You've paid for a lot of stupid stuff. You understand, right? So the
Yeah.
50% rule is a good general rule to kind of quick and dirty. That's my expenses, and then I have to pay my debt service, right? The mortgage,
Mm.
and then that's how you calculate how much cash flow I'm going to have. And maybe this is kind of answering your question in a roundabout way. Like, I wouldn't really buy a property unless you have like couple $100 of cash flow after all that
Okay.
expenses in there. If not, it's just too thin.
Yeah, it's my wife and I are looking to do something too, just because we're both going to have VA loans because she's deployed right now. She's Army, I'm Air Force, and so we both are going to have like our VA loans, and then when she comes back, the nice part about it is we both have the post 9/11 that they give you for school, so it's 4 years of school they pay for, and then they pay for your school, and then they pay you to go to school for 4 years. So it's one of those things where her and I have always talked about trying to do something as far as like a rental property or get something to like buy and rent out. I'm sure you've heard of him or seen him, but I follow Grant Cardone. Do you know about him?
Yeah, he's a great marketer, right?
He is, but he has said something before that I hope I don't screw this up, but I think he said rent where you live
Yeah,
and
invest where the numbers make sense, but live where you want.
yeah,
Yeah,
along the lines of that. And I was like, oh man, that's a great idea. And I've always told people like, hey, like don't buy and blow all your like liquid cash into this one thing. But here I am. I haven't done any of that just because we've been all over the place with the military in the past few years, and it's scary like moving all the time and not having a chance to kind of like sit down and focus on that. But her and I definitely want to, and it's
yeah.
just
I mean,
we're like,
I think that's like
mhm,
I mean, we can kind of get into your situation now if you want, but like
yeah,
I think that's what's wrong with all the gurus out there, right?
hmm
They say a whole lot of nothing and a lot of words. Where I like to kind of like every situation is a little bit different. Sure, I kind of pigeonhole people into like this wealth elevator journey where, based on your income and your net worth, these is a general set of strategies you should be doing. But, like for you, your personal situation, right? You got the VA loan, like that's a sweet deal, right? You should utilize that, especially if your net worth is under 250,000, 500,000.
yeah,
Now, we don't
hmm
need to go into that, right?
it's
And
fine. It's
let's
all
just stick.
public.
Okay. Well, we'll just say like,
I'm not afraid to tell you.
say
I'm not. It's okay.
so let's just say the average dude out there has their VA loan, right? And
hmm
their net worth is 100,000, 200,000.
hmm
Great. I don't think that, well, it depends how much they make, right? Too, right? If again, if they're over a couple $100,000 a year, pretty much at a credit investor, I may probably think about just going straight to the MBA or syndications and private placements as a passive investor. But I mean, I personally started with $100,000 salary and almost zero net worth. So what did I do? I bought rental properties, and you are likely to live in a place where the rental properties aren't great from a rent to value ratio standpoint.
hmm
You mentioned to me that you're gonna go back, or Dallas, right? Like, so it's not like a foreign country to you.
Correct. Hmm
Are you guys gonna move back there?
We're not too sure. There's a couple places we're looking at just because you in the military you get this thing called a DOS when you get out, which is called a data separation. Everything is acronyms in the military. I'm sure you've already heard about that, but everything is acronyms. So you get that when you get out, and then so today's the 19th. So say today was my last day. So the military gives you 1 year to choose if you want to go move, and they'll move you for free as long as you're like my home of address is in Texas when I joined the military. So if your home of address is in the United States, they will move you anywhere in the country for free one time within that 1 year. So we're like, oh, awesome. Do we want to utilize this, or do we want to stay here? Because, just like with her being around family and her brother having his first kid, we like want our kids to kind of grow up together and be around everybody. So we're not too sure if we're just going to like rent here or stay in right here because we got a really sweet gig with the setup of this owner. Him and his wife are phenomenal. Or if we're going to like look at possibly going to Texas, excuse me, maybe Florida. We were looking at the Carolinas, Montana, but then I was like, well, if we stay here and rent, let's try to set it up to where we can get a rental property back in Texas because if you're 100% disabled in the state of Texas, you don't pay any rental property. In California, you get like a deduction, so it's up to I want to say 164,000 off the cost of your home. So if your home is 600 grand minus 164, then whatever's left over is what you would pay property tax on. So Texas is zero, Florida is zero. So we're kind of on
I mean,
a
I don't
back and
really have
forth.
too much military plans, and there's always a lot of like higher level hacking, as you're alluding to. I got a buddy, David. He runs like military to millionaire or something like that. So he works with a lot of guys that would try and optimize that. Especially guys getting started. Where I kind of step in once guys get more on a credit investor status, being more of a passive investor. But from what I know, right, and I'm not taking into account all these like little hacks with these stuff you're talking about, right? But like what I would be thinking of is like you need to use the VA bill, right? At least to get your net worth over that 300, 400, $500,000 net worth level, right? I would not suggest buying a property in California because the damn thing's not going to cash flow, right?
It's so high that out here the VA goes upwards of 726,000, but if you are trying to go to Napa, it is a little bit more. But then in that same sense, what you just said is perfect. It's too much.
But to correct me if I'm wrong, to utilize the VA, you need to actually live in the damn thing.
Right? So yes and no. There's loopholes.
Yeah.
But because there's a lot of people in the military that they have a home, like say there's two of us, right? Like mill to mill, like my wife and I say, I use my VA loan on this house. She can use her VA loan on another house, but there's a certain way that you can do it legally to rent it out and do it that way. The VA, it's frowned upon. They don't. There's a legality to it, though. You are correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're saying for a friend, right? You heard a friend or a guy that no longer is in the military that used to do this.
Right.
They did things like they got divorced, one went that way, but then I don't know, whatever, right? But the idea is you want to utilize these things. So like, let's just say high level, right? Like you move to the Carolina, you guys set up shop there, you buy a house, you put down 50 grand to go buy a $250,000 house, right? That's an average payment. But because that's what people should do if they're not in the military, but you guys have kind of the golden ticket. You don't really have to put in any. Then you kind of stay there however long you guys supposed to stay there per getting that sweet perk with the military, and then you jump over, you get another house, and you keep doing this. Here's the problem I see that a lot of lower net worth guys, especially guys in the military, do is they get like buy too many houses. And like I said, accredited investors all see the light at some point. You don't want to be like me who having 11 rentals because it's a pain in the ass to sell that stuff. It's always smoother just to go right into the bigger stuff as soon as possible. But part of that is getting your net worth up to a respectable level where you can consistently write $50,000 checks at least, or even $100,000 checks.
Okay.
But the idea is, you keep doing this. You keep buying rental properties. Maybe that's one for some of the higher income earners. For some of the lower income earners that make only 50, 60K a year, it takes you forever to save $25,000. You may want to buy more and more properties, basically augmenting your income to get it on par of some of the higher income earners. basically what's happening esoterically.
So
But
if my wife and I hypothetically have 60 in savings, which may or may not, be true, what is the route that you think we should take? Let's just say
go,
50K.
go to a low price area, use your VA loan,
Mm-hmm.
and start renting out as soon as possible, as soon as legally possible,
Okay.
and then rent somewhere, or use the VA golden ticket again, get another one. Now here's the tricky part, right? Like this is really, really this is really more personal finance. It have to be evaluated down the road. But like what I'm always trying to do is when is the on ramp to get you out of this landlord nonsense as soon as possible. We need the landlord stuff to get your net worth up and get your income,
Sure. Get the portfolio going,
right?
I
You got to
guess.
build a base. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just go investing in private placements and syndications and into apartment deals and whatnot right off the bat. You have to have a principle and a base first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
That's the tricky part, right? I mean,
yeah, no, it
and,
is.
but at least you're seeing like the road ahead, right? And then now once you're in the accredited investor world, you start interacting with other accredited investors, and you kind of look down upon all the people doing these flipping houses and borrowing strategies and stuff like that. Like that's just creating a job for yourself.
It's a
I
good
mean, in
way.
the
Yeah, good
meantime, you got
point.
to be securing a good career, higher pay salary, because that's what powers all this. If you don't make six figures, then don't listen to a thing I'm saying here, right? Of course. But if you're a working professional, you build your net worth, build your income, and then at some point you take it to the next level, and you enjoy your life as a passive investor, and then you keep accumulating. From what I see, once investors get to be about 2.5 million net worth, that's usually the inflection point where things really start to take off, and you're probably several years away from keeping that $4 to $5 million net worth end game. And
Oh,
then, as
wow.
we say here in Hawaii, you're pow, you're done,
Mm.
more than likely. But in this journey, you see what's happening. You're getting away from traditional investments because they don't make as much returns, and you pay taxes on it. You need to get into alternative investments because alternative investments is what's going to kick out better returns and more tax advantage type of returns. And then over the years, your income shifts from ordinary income. Ooh, you don't want that, right?
Hmm.
That comes from your job, 1099s. The government loves that. That's how they tax the hell out of most people
Sure.
doing it, right? But in the beginning, that's how you have to make money, right? I was
Sure.
like that, but over time, you need passive income, and that's how you kind of get away, pay a lot less taxes legally doing that. But that's what's happening on a high level, right? But if people want an action plan, buy alternative investments, stop investing in traditional investment crap.
So when you say like traditional, you're telling like, would you say, like you were saying earlier, you're not uh, an advisor in any sense or whatever, but you know, um, if it were
Yeah.
you, are you telling people essentially like, or would you recommend if it were you that like, hey, like take your money out of the bank, put it into an asset, take your money out of Roth IRAs, or what is kind of like your insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, like retirement accounts to me are kind of a big sham for four reasons. If you, especially if you make under $340,000 a year, you want to pay your taxes on it today and get it out of those supposedly tax sheltered accounts, right?
Okay.
Because first of all, you're in a lower tax bracket today because you make less. Why would you want to pay taxes on in the future when you're in a higher tax bracket? That's number
Right.
one. Although most of these like financial wisdoms that we're all just nod our heads and shake to and listen to the old guy in the office is predicated on when you get older, you shrivel up and die, you make less money, and therefore you're in a lower tax bracket. But that's not the case, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be richer, well, not richer, but we're going to be having more income in the future. So that's number one. Number two, we all know where this country is going. You're going to have more entitlement programs, taxes are going to go up. So the tax brackets in the future are going to go up. So therefore, get it out now so you pay taxes on it now. The third reason is, we kind of alluded to it earlier. Like when you get into alternative investments, you get passive losses, and that's what allows you to play these games on these taxes. We play chess, but most people play checkers on their taxes, and all they do is put their money in their 401k. But if you keep your money in your retirement account, 401k, Roth, all this stuff, then you never get the tax benefits, even if you did invest in real estate and you did a self-directed IRA or something like that. Lastly, you get the money out in those retirement accounts when you're 65, but we're all planning, if you do this right, you start in your 20s, you should be retired by your late 40s. You're going to want the money out.
So do you think right now is a good time, considering where the economy is at and a so-called like recession is coming? Like, do you think now is a good time where interest rates are a little bit higher to go in and buy something?
It doesn't really matter ever. I mean,
Okay.
you got a dollar cost average anyway. Interest rates are higher, that means prices are lower.
True. Yeah, it's got to they try to
It really
fluctuate.
is like heads I win, tails I win. I mean, maybe that's not a good cavalier attitude, but like, I mean, look, it worked for me, and there's a lot of quiet people out there who have all passive income, not paying any taxes and just chilling.
Yeah, it's that's what her and I did. My wife and I a few years ago, 2019 was the whole like put stuff into a Roth IRA, and this is what it's going to be monthly or yearly. And for me, I was like, okay, I've seen a lot of people. This is what I knew, traditional. Let me try it out. So we both had our own accounts, and I think in like 2 years, which is obviously not enough time, I'm assuming, excuse me, to like let it really kind of accrue and do its thing. But like 2 years hit, and I'm looking at it every month, and I'm like, man, for 2 years you're gonna tell me it's only gone up like a couple $100. I'm like, God, this is such a waste of time to me. And then I immediately thought, I was like, wow, like why don't I ever pull the trigger on it and do something to get like a rental property or like an Airbnb, and like you were saying, like have them pay your mortgage and then have an extra $400 or $500 left over. That $400 or $500 made in 1 month was more than what the Roth IRA I had in 2 years. So it's like when you say this, like it's all kind of like a big sham. I mean,
Uh,
it's eye opening for people. People need to realize that they're just wasting time and wasting money.
yeah, I mean that's why I do what I do, right? Because I think like the people that deserve like retirement in this fashion in a third of the time are like the people who work hard, the working professionals that make six figures and above. It's not the wealthy pay the taxes. It's all those high performing Americans who went to college, worked their ass off. The officers, right, who were in the military that worked their ass off and went to these higher paid jobs, and they're the ones paying all the taxes and also propelling society forward.
Right.
And I think that's kind of really sad and unfortunate. But that's why like I just got lucky, right? Because I was the same thing, right? I was this engineer who just I did everything I was supposed to do, really frugal with my money, bought a house to live in, went through my work every day, and then I was supposed to work at that job for next 40 to 50 years. But somehow I mistakenly bought a rental for myself, right? Which led me down a path of meeting other accredited investors, and then my eyes were opened by like, wow, there's a different way that people do this. You can call it the red pill of finance, and this goes well beyond like they call them boggle heads that are into like Roth IRAs and all these index funds and all this nonsense. I mean, it works, right? But like, there's a way that the wealthy are doing this that is something anybody can do. However, there's so much noise out there, and you layer on top of it the very like the marketing that gets us all to think like we need to give our. It's so complicated. Oh my God, we need to give our money to the big Wall Street companies because they're smart. They hire the smart guys. Yeah. First off, it's not that complicated. Right? There's nothing like people listen to YouTube videos. You can go on my website, watch the YouTube videos, and you can understand it. Just download the analyzer, like I said, right? It's not that hard.
Mm.
You guys can do this. It's
Oh,
not
I'm
freaking
definitely doing it
rocket
after.
science. Um,
Yeah.
but like I think that's it pissing me off because like the way the Wall Street marketing works is like they try and make it more complicated, like get the matrix thing coming down the screen,
Mhm.
they're like, you're too dumb.
Let us
Just
do
give
it.
our money to us,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's also like it's just a lot of marketing money, and that's where all your money goes to. It's all top of the line expenses where they don't
Right.
really report it to you that way to propagate this nonsense. And then you combine that with the fact where we're all taught to respect our elders. I get it, right? It's like, why would I want to listen to what the hell Jerry and Glenn are doing over there with their retirement accounts? They've been here for like 40 years, and they
Right.
won't leave.
Hmm.
You know, it really like, and that was another rule that I learned is never listen to anybody who's not financially free about finances,
You
right?
guys need to listen to that right there. That's a good one.
And when I started to see that, but more importantly, when I started to get around those people, right? Because I wasn't, my parents weren't millionaires, and we work with a lot of first generation millionaires now. The story is the same. We don't have anybody that we know. None of our buddies, certainly, none of our parents, aunties and uncles did any of this stuff,
Right.
right? So it makes total sense.
Yeah, I think all the signs are kind of coming to it with me getting out and then, with both of us having the VA loans, then being able to go to school and have that paid for and get the money for that. And then, with myself getting, the VA disability as well, which is also tax free monthly for the rest of my life. It's just like, I feel like things are kind of adding up to the sense of where, like, hey, you need to do this, like you should do this, and it's going to be beneficial. Yeah, maybe I guess the best word to say is I'm a little like timid about it or scared, but in that sense, like I know it's going to be, or I should know that it's going to be good, because everywhere I'm going now, not necessarily in California, but even back home in Texas, like when I left in 2020, or when we all left really in 2020, um, the surrounding areas and the neighborhoods, they were just putting up the wooden signs of like, hey, this apartment complex is coming in here. I'm like, oh, okay. And then we just went back to Texas less than 3 weeks ago, and every corner, every square inch has got an apartment complex, apartment complex, apartment complex, apartment complex. And I was just thinking to myself, like, man, like we really need to like come in, swoop in, get a home, buy it,
Yeah.
rent it out. Because yeah, like you said, like that for us, I think, having like 50 plus thousand in savings, I feel like us kind of coming in and doing like a rental property in that sense and kind of build it up for a couple years. And then I feel like we can really turn it around and then get into something bigger and bigger and bigger. So,
Yeah. I mean, we invest on this thesis that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And
mhm.
I would consider myself middle class, right? Like my parents, myself went to college, right? So we're technically middle class. But that middle class I would consider you're middle class. That's a
Mhm.
compliment. you
Yeah.
know,
Well, shit,
but
thanks.
it's yeah, yeah. But that middle class is shrinking, right? And it's
Yeah.
being absorbed by the lower middle class, lower end, which is why we build workforce housing. So workforce housing, in Dallas might mean $900 to $1,300 a month in rent. Um, and we do that because in a recession, the luxury class A stuff, those guys get fired and they got to move to the class B,
Sure.
which is where we are in, right? So,
Right.
but we invest because it's performs well in difficult times, but in the future, like un- unfortunately, this is the way the country is going, right? Like it's the bifurcation of the haves and the have-nots. You gotta pick a side, guys. And
Yeah,
if
it's
not, you're
true.
just gonna live in one of our apartments and pay us $1,300 a month,
And that's what I'm
and you
saying.
gotta
It's
pay
gonna get
us
to that.
$300 a month before we can have the guy pick up your trash every month.
Yeah, it's like the house we live in now, the like I said, the owner, him and his wife, fantastic. This house is 3,000 square feet. It's 5 beds, which this one is technically a full bedroom, but I turned it into like the office slash podcast room. And then we have 3 full baths, 3 car garage out here by a golf course in the hills. And, he gives it to us for a very, very, very good price. When I was kind of blown away when I first talked to him about it. But
Yeah, because he's an amateur landlord. He's more afraid of you suing him and shitting on his property, where he knows you're well, like I said, you're middle class,
yeah,
But he
especially
knows,
he
like, on
rents
your
for
record, you
military.
guys are, yeah, military. You guys
Hmm.
are reasonable people.
Guaranteed
But
paycheck.
that's just like the separation between, most investors are amateurs, right? What we're saying here is get a little more educated, understand the numbers a little bit, open up a Google sheet, Excel spreadsheet for once, but then also take the next, once you grow your net worth, get into the world of syndications and private placements into this world and expand from there. Um, the crazy thing is real estate is such a great investment vehicle, so much more than traditional investments,
Mhm.
that even if you're a horrible real estate investor and you're kind of like your landlord, he's gonna do awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he told us like some of the perks. He was like, "Hey, if you want to do if you want to do the landscaping yourself, I'll take an X amount of money off the cost every month." I'm like, "Holy shit, are you kidding me?" And then, what else? Or he'll do that, and then every month he has I forgot what they're called, but it's like the pest control that comes through, and that's $130 every month. So whatever we give him, take off 130, then take off whatever it is for landscaping. I mean, he's for a renter's perspective, I'm like, holy shit, this guy's fantastic landlord. But then I'm like, man, like how much money is this guy like actually making? Because I'm like, he's paying for landscaping, and then he pays for the bugs or the people to come around every month, and there's something else that he pays for, I forget. But I was like, wow, I was like, he, whatever he's given us, which is a very good price, I'll tell you offline. And then like what gets deducted, I'm like, holy shit, man, like I don't know if he's making as much as he wants, or maybe the house is paid off and doesn't care, just wants to pay the property tax. So
Yeah. I'll, I'll recommend you this, because I think this is the problem I see most people have, right? You have nobody in your peer group that even remotely does this stuff or remotely has $1 million or more, right? Who wasn't a
mhm,
trust fund kid, wasn't born with it.
mhm.
What I would try is, like, next time that landlord comes around, buy him a nice bottle of wine, like a Camus or whatever, $100 bottle, and say, like, hey man, I'm gonna be your tenant, but can I take you out to dinner, nice restaurant, and can you just teach me the numbers on the rental property?
That's a good idea.
And he's not a sophisticated guy, right? Which is why he has a property in California. But I think it'll do you two things. And when I was first initially starting, like, I was intimidated myself, right?
Hmm.
But
For
then
sure.
you start to see, like, people who aren't geniuses do this stuff, and then you start to get the momentum going that, yeah, this dude doesn't even know how to turn on a computer. I can do all right, right?
Hmm.
And then you can ask your more detailed questions too. But I think that would be very, like, helpful for you. And then, of course, come to my website, Simple Passive Financial, and we'll show you how you really do it.
I mean, I'm telling you, you have my word. I'm definitely gonna
Yeah.
do. I'm gonna go to it and download whatever I need to do, because her and I are my wife and I are so serious about it. Because our thing is we want to set it up to where, yeah, like if we want to go, hypothetically, we want to travel. That's our thing. We love traveling. We've been to a lot of places, and we're like, hey, we want to have, obviously, the education, and set it up to where we don't have to worry about anything, where we have this, the ROI coming in and paying for stuff for us to go do this, and it's not coming out of our pocket. Like that's what we want to have, like that financial freedom, I guess, if you will, is cliches, what everybody wants to say, but we want to have that financial freedom, and then being able to travel. And like you were saying, the rental properties, and get into bigger and better projects and build a bigger portfolio. So that's our goal. That's what we want to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's the next step then? Anything else that you think you need to get going? I'm
Well,
always trying to see like
no, yeah.
this real estate investing thing is pretty easy, but the
Mhm.
hard part is like, all right, well, how do you turn information to an effective action? Right?
Yeah, I guess like what would be the next step? I mean, like, do we have to talk to like? I mean, I'm so new to this in that sense, and so I'm like, okay, cool. Who do I contact? Like, I don't just go talk to a realtor, or do I? And just don't do we just look at properties in those other places and be like, hey, cool, this is what we can get off of one VA loan because we can stack
Oh,
them together, but
what all, I mean, I would say check out my website, of course, right? But
yeah.
yeah, just shoot me a note and I'll add you to this group I used to have.
Mhm.
There's like 20 hours of content in it. Like we used to sell a group coaching thing, but I'll give you it for free. And then if you have any other
Appreciate that.
guys that you think
Mhm.
are kind of looking to buy their first rental property,
So
um,
I got a huge network, so
we can hook them up for free too.
how do you want me
I
to
think
shoot you a
that would
message
be
that way?
just email.
Is it the
Just
one
say
that we
like,
have in for this chat setup or no?
yeah, lay at simplepassivecashflow.com or
Okay.
team at
Okay.
simplepassivecashflow.com. Just tell them that we were on the podcast, and then specifically call out the incubator.
Incubator. Okay.
Yeah, that way the team knows what the heck they're talking about.
I'm gonna write this down.
Yeah, I mean we we just usually give that for free. But I
Okay.
think that's going to give you all the first tangible steps. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. There's like 20 hours of videos and
Oh wow.
coaching
Okay.
calls.
I'm gonna
But
have nothing but time.
um,
So
yeah, but I think that'll be the first thing that you'll need, and it takes you down all these steps, right? Exactly. Who do you talk to first, right? But I would spend a few hours in there going through that and playing around with the analyzer first
okay.
before you waste other people's time, because what you'll realize in this like world, especially when you start to get into the syndications and private placements as a passive investor, it's all like relationships.
Mhm.
That's why I say, don't go to your landlord empty-handed without a nice bottle of wine, you know. But don't, which also is like a big lesson that we teach, is like don't go hitting up property managers or brokers being a
It's
complete
nothing.
noob. Yeah,
Mhm.
because they're either going to take advantage of you, or they're just going to pass you off to some loser that they don't like.
Yeah, I think the best step is probably. I mean, I could do it now, but
Get a little
just
educated
yeah.
first, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm gonna wait till I get out because I'm really at the last step of getting out of the military. So I just need there's a few things that I
yeah,
need to do, but it's not in
yeah.
my hands. So
Just do the e-courses for now.
yeah,
You don't have to take any action. Just learn for now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. It's been informative and insightful, which is nice because I think it's finally going to give me and like my wife and I essentially like that extra step to be like, okay, cool. Like we have the tools in front of us. We just need to kind of like focus on that and just take it one step at a time, get educated, make the move and just start doing it. Don't be afraid to dive into it and, really make some money out of this.
But I mean, there's a lot of books out there that fills people's heads with dreams and
It does. They do.
aspirations and hope, and they show you of this different way that I'm sure you've seen this multiple times. I'm very opposite. I'm obviously there's a different way of doing all of this, but I'm more like, well, what are the actionable steps to do it, instead of just pumping you up and you're like, yeah, we're gonna be rich, right?
Yeah.
We'll be investors. What do we do? So that's, I think,
Yeah.
before you lose that motivation streak, never pay for coaching. Just that's why you just give away the damn thing, just to be troll all these other real estate guru people out there.
Yeah. No, it's that's what they're telling us today because we have a week class we have to go through. The instructor was saying like never pay somebody to do your resume. It's like you're saying never pay somebody for these programs and stuff like that. Because yeah, I feel the same way. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely gonna have to get linked up. I'm gonna shoot that email over. I got the names written down over here. I'm gonna check your website out. Go over it with the wife and let her know what's up, because she takes my word for it. She, she's like, hey, if you trust it, I'll explain it to her because I want her to understand. But majority of the day, like, we really trust each other. So if she's like, hey, this is what we need to do, and you think it's right, let's do it, and then we just go in it together. So awesome. So yeah, I think that honestly for me, like, that kind of covers a majority of like what I was curious about and wanted to talk to and have other people on the outside, that are going to be watching this, like, kind of understand, that it's really not that complicated. It's just you have to start somewhere, and like you were saying, like, take action and do the necessary steps to get involved into it, and that it could be a very lucrative thing for themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So simplepassivecashflow.com. Is there any other things that you want to plug that you would like to?
That's it. We got the podcast and yeah, the website. I mean, eventually when the new book comes out, we'll rebrand to the Wealth Elevator. As
Okay.
we, the whole concept is that there's different parts of this wealth building journey. That course that I was kind of mentioning that we give for free for
Mm-hmm.
guys, that's kind of like the starter level, right? We
Okay.
focus mainly on like the middle and the upper floors. What do you do when you get to 1 to 5 million, and then 5 million, 10 million and above? What are the strategies there? We charge for that, but
As
for
you should.
guys, just getting started,
Yeah.
you got to start somewhere, like I did.
Yeah. That's definitely what we're going to do. Well, I appreciate you answering really quickly on, where I was able to contact you from, which is really awesome. So, and then getting on here was exciting. Looking forward to it, because this is something that I've never really talked about, but I've always been curious with it. And like I said, we want to do it. We're going to. So it's just taking that next step. So, do you have anything else, like social media wise, besides the simplecashflow.com, that people could reach out to you, or is it just the website, like whatever you prefer?
We try to not do too much social media.
I get it. No worries.
You hit your cash flow number and just get off social media and live a life, man.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you guys can go over to simplepassivecashflow.com and check out what Lane has to offer, the analyzer, dive into this stuff and, listen to what he has to say. And hopefully you guys learned something from this episode. I myself learned something. My wife and I are definitely going to get into it. You guys can check out episode 10 on Intel Within podcast. It'll be across, you'll see the notifications come across Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook. So it'll be edited here and put out in the next, few days or so. And we'll just kind of go from there and see what you guys think and give us, feedback on it. And, some questions down below of what you may want to ask Lane, or, something like that I can communicate them to. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. And once again, Lane, thank you for coming on and giving me your time. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. See ya.
All
Bye.
right.